Being a district attorney is not an easy job, and it's one that is always full of controversy. You just cannot simply try to be popular all the time, regardless of where your community stands. You have to be able to stand up for what is right. We have seen an uptick in crimes of hate in the city. This is a city that has had a tradition of standing for equality and freedom for all, and we certainly need to stand together to ensure that these acts of violence that are based on racist behavior or gender or any other type of hate are turned around and that we will not allow them to happen in our city.
What do you think is the most important thing for an investigator to understand about hate crime laws and enforcing them?
It's really important for police departments to have some basic training for all officers, even patrol officers, to recognize the presence of hate crime and to be able to ask the right questions during an investigation to be able to obtain whether in fact there is evidence of hate, and then be able to articulate that in an investigation in a way that then the prosecutor can take it to the next level. You may have victims that actually don't understand that they're the victims of a hate crime. They're just, okay, I got jumped, I got beat up, this happened to me or that, and they are not necessarily always making the connection with hate. But if you are going to do your due diligence as a police officer, and if you want to make sure that you're providing for strong public safety in your community, and if you have hate-motivated incidents that happen in your community and you're not seeing them and you're not investigating them and you're not presenting them to the district attorney's office in the right configuration, you are leaving a whole community unprotected to what can be tremendous violence and tremendous impact.
You're a former police chief, and now you're district attorney. What kind of vantage point do you think that gives you in terms of understanding the role of police and district attorneys working together?
That certainly informs the way that I behave as a prosecutor, and certainly as a police chief, having started in LA working with primarily immigrant communities. Myself being an immigrant, having experienced the hate and the anti-immigrant movement in Arizona, and having to deal with that and having to deal with the problems with a sheriff department that through the leadership was completely out of control, targeting Latinos purely because they were Latinos. That certainly has informed the way that I look at things, and certainly has increased my level of sensitivity as a police chief, certainly in educating my workforce to make sure that they were very sensitive to understanding the problems around hate and those problems around immigration and immigrant communities. And certainly as a district attorney, that experience continues to build on. And I believe that it offers me a very different perspective that often others may miss. And I think that that's why you see that not only I'm very sensitive to hate crimes and immigration issues, but I make sure that we put that emphasis in the way that we talk to the public and how we outreach and how we work with communities that often would not be connected to the criminal justice system.
What do investigators need to understand about hate motivation when they're investigating a case?
I recommend that district attorneys have special prosecutors that are trained in dealing with hate crimes. These are difficult crimes to prosecute, and they're difficult for many reasons. Sometimes your victims are they're afraid of the system, they're reluctant to come forward. But beyond that, this is one of the few areas where we have to prove motive and we have to prove intent. That raises the bar for the prosecution, and to have somebody that doesn't understand the nuances of the law and does not understand how to work with his victims and be able to present the case in a way that a jury is going to be able to identify and understand the complexities of the case, I think it would probably reduce your effectiveness. I think it's critical that you have people that specialize in this area. It's complex, and you need an entire team that can actually wrap themselves around the case, around the victim, and be able to understand how to get the best outcome.
Why do we have the extra charges that exist for hate crime laws?
When you have a crime that is clearly motivated by hate, and everybody else knows that it's motivated by hate, what you have is basically having an act of terrorism. is an act of terrorism against that community. The impact, the intended impact is not only to hurt this person, but it's to terrorize the entire community based solely on the identification of that community as whatever, whether it's a gender, race, nationality. So the distinction between just a simple crime and a crime that is motivated by hate is significant because of the broader impact that a crime motivated by hate has on entire communities.
What advice do you have for judges who may resist hate crime charges?
We want a bench that is impartial. We want a bench that is neutral. But we want a bench that is well educated. And part of the education is not only understanding the nuances of the law, but understanding why those laws exist and the impact that these crimes have in the community, because that is part of the judicial responsibility. So having a well-informed bench is critical to us being able to do our job when we have to do it.
We've seen cases of immigrants who are reluctant to come forward when they're attacked because they fear for their legal status. What do you say as a district attorney, the person who's responsible for enforcing the laws here, to immigrants in the community here about that situation?
In general terms, hate crimes are very underreported, regardless of whether the victims believe that they would have an immigration consequence or not. Now, here in San Francisco, we try, well, I shouldn't say we try, we really go out to the community to talk about the fact that your immigration status plays no role when you come in to report a crime as a victim or as a witness. And I think that generally speaking, we try very hard. The problem is that even when we try very hard to get the word out, often people are listening to what is happening in other communities.
There's a really huge gap between the number of hate crimes that are reported every year to the FBI and the number that actually take place. Why is it important to address this huge gap?
You know, one of the negative consequences of not reporting hate crimes is that often the level of resources that are needed to deal with the problem may not be placed there because the problem doesn't appear to be there. So it's really important, as I indicated during the meeting with the LGBT community, if you want government to step up and put money and resources to deal with the problem, we have to document the problem. And in our criminal justice system, part of documenting the problem is reporting the crimes. So it's really important for people to report crimes, not only in order to enhance their own safety and the safety of the community, but to ensure that, you know, there is enough resources that are being placed to deal with the problem.
What programs have you instituted in the district attorney's office to help victims feel more comfortable to report hate crimes?
That a lot of vulnerable victims are not going to come to the Hall of Justice. They're not going to come to a police station to report crimes. So what we did is we started to put many of our victim advocates out into the community. So in the Mission area, they work out of a community-based organization called Mujeres Unidas. In the Bayview area, they work out of a YMCA. In Chinatown, they work out of Cameron House. In the Tenderloin, they're working out of Glide Memorial. So what we're doing is we're getting our services out there, and we're putting them in places where people that may be reluctant to approach the criminal justice system will feel comfortable going to a community center where they feel that it's less threatening, and yet the services are there.
Why is it important for a DA to be seen out in the community and to address people who might be vulnerable?
You know, it's very important to be proactive in public safety. There are obviously times where you're going to have to react to a problem, but I think that when you can get ahead of the curve, when you can get out there to the community, and when I'm talking about the community, I'm talking about all the various communities. Number one, indicate that you're available. Number two, that you're sensitive to the problem. Thirdly, educate the community how to prevent from being a victim. You know, the best way to make a community safe is by preventing crime in the first place. And in order to prevent crime, you have to get out there. We need to collectively continue to work in order to get the word out, raise the level of awareness in every community that when we are targeting people because of who they are, not only are we hurting that community, but we're hurting every community in San Francisco, and that collectively, we're not going to allow that to take place, and that we will work collectively to make sure that we do everything that we can as a community to stop it.